So, other story I wanted to cover with you real quick. And I don't remember if we covered this on Overtime or if we talked about it in a pre-show, but we've mentioned a couple of times actor Timothy Busfield. So he was accused of some crimes against children stuff in New Mexico. I believe he's in Albuquerque. And the Albuquerque police found this. And then supposedly it took him several days to turn himself in, so the Albuquerque police turned it over to U.S. Marshals for them to go find him, but he eventually turned himself in. Well, the plot thickens here a little bit. So in theory, what we have is an actor slash producer slash director slash all the slashes that they do with this Hollywood stuff who did things to children. And we've seen this before and we wring our hands. However, it might not be as simple as what they say. Timothy Busfield's defense blames, quote, stage parents with fraud for child sex abuse charges. Timothy Busfield's legal team has argued that the parents of the accusers in the actor's child sex abuse case have a, quote, well-documented history of fraud and dishonesty. Ronald Rodas and Angeli LaSalle, the parents of the twin boys, had, quote, an obvious financial and retaliatory motive when filing the criminal complaint against Busfield earlier this month, the actor's lawyers stated in documents obtained by Fox News. Busfield, 68, surrendered to local authorities on sex abuse charges on January 13th. He was held without bail at the time of his arrest on 2 counts of criminal sexual contact with a minor and 1 count of child abuse. In a response opposing pretrial detention, there we go, Dan. His team argued that the state's case against Busfield was built entirely on the accounts of 2 stage parents who are not neutral observers. Quote, their allegations emerged only after the loss of the twins' role and only after consultation with civil counsel, creating an obvious financial and retaliatory motive. The motive must be evaluated against the couple's well-documented history of fraud and dishonesty. Busfield's lawyers noted that Rodas, quote, is a former attorney who was convicted of federal conspiracy and wire fraud and later disbarred following that prosecution for a multi-million-dollar scheme in which he used his law license to deceive vulnerable victims for profit. Rodas pleaded guilty in 2017 to 1 count of conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud. He was sentenced to 41 months in prison in order to pay nearly $4 million in restitution for his role in a multi-million-dollar fraudulent mortgage modification scheme. Now, just to be clear, this pleading guilty to wire fraud, that is the Fed's default plea. They always run to wire fraud because that's the easiest thing to prove, and that's always held over your head as a plea deal. During Tuesday's hearing, Amber Fairberg urged Judge David Murphy to release Busfield from custody pending trial as he was the victim of a retaliatory campaign created by Rodas and LaSalle. Quote, they are victims and they were still these 2 boys, but they weren't victimized by Timothy Busfield, Fairberg said. They were victimized by their own parents who no longer could make the money as a lawyer disbarred, no longer could write bad checks, taking 80% of the money they made on a TV show, and then manufacture into victims as revenge. According to a warrant obtained by Fox News, the twins, 2 11-year-old twins, alleged that the director, who they were told to call Uncle Tim on the set of The Cleaning Lady, had touched them inappropriately, blah, blah. They go into the details of the actual allegation, which I don't think we need to go into. But I will say this, where initially it looked like he was probably guilty because they put out a warrant. He didn't immediately turn himself in. There was rumors that he was trying to run, that he was trying to evade. However, there must be some meat to this, at least in the judge's eyes, because while he was being held without bond, after this hearing, he was released ROR. So there's something to it. And the sad part is if there is something to it, and this really was a made-up scenario, this really was some bad actors as parents. Not saying the kids were bad actors on the set, you know what I mean? Which we see all the time in Hollywood. These parents of these child actors tend to be just horrible. Will Wheaton, who played Wesley Crusher on Star Trek, The Next Generation, that's a very famous case of parents who were just absolutely horrible to him, and just ruined his childhood. So this stuff does happen. But I was going to say the sad thing is, though, is if that is true, and if this is a scenario where this guy has been falsely accused, his career is still never going to be the same. There's still going to be this stink around him, regardless. And people are going to be hesitant to support his projects. There's always going to be questions. And that is the really sad part of it. So I'm hoping that this is the case. I'm hoping that really nothing ever did happen to those kids, by his hands anyways. But that means something definitely was happening to them by the hands of the parents, not necessarily sexually abusive, but certainly used the kids, if that's the case. And I don't know, we'll see. So I'm going to keep an eye on this one, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm curious to see where this goes, because it seemed pretty clear at first when they did the investigation, they put out a warrant, and then all of a sudden he wasn't there. But it's not so clear now, is it? I guess we'll find out. Alrighty, my friends. Mike's here. Never mind. I was going to say I'm out of here, but Michael, I'm not out of here.
I was just going to say real quick, we always jump down the throats of these guys and but there are times where these allegations are made up. They're BS, especially as you mentioned, the Will Wheaton thing. Yeah. And Will Wheaton. So there are bad actors, so to speak, in this arena. And Barbara always talks about breaking out the wood chipper. Well, the same thing. If you make a false allegation, you deserve like a double wood chipper, two wood chippers or a wheat thresher or something, because that's worse. Because what that does is, of course, it ruins. There are people that are actually victims, and then it puts a cloud of suspicion over whether or not those people that were actual victims were indeed victimized. So the punishment for false allegation should be worse, I think, or at least as bad.
I could make a case for it to be at least a mid-level felony, if not higher.
Yes.
Because of all of the damage that you do, all of the resources that you tie up. Because I don't think I'm wrong. Even if this proves out and the guy was falsely accused, his career is still torpedoed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because there's always going to be some people that go, well, they wouldn't have brought charges if there wasn't something there, even if it turns out that he's completely innocent. Yeah. So that's why, and then civil cases, this is the kind of thing where, and I'm always about, keeping damages within reason in some civil cases. This is one where I say go hog wild with the damages. I mean, $1 billion, whatever whatever judgment you have to get against somebody like that, because you've not only ruined their career, but I mean, just their reputation in general. Now everyone's going to think they're a weird Steve, and that's just, and if they're not, that's an incredible stink that you will never get off of you, no matter how hard you scrub in society.
Yeah. Well, Ashley just brought up in the chat that he's married to Melissa Gilbert, another actress, and her career will be affected by this too.
Well, absolutely. Anybody that associates with him. Sure. Yep. So, if it turns out that these are false allegations, yep. That's what should happen. Yeah, and I agree, Dan. This is this should be mid-level or even upper-level felony. which it is. Filing a false police report is just a misdemeanor, and sometimes you can get you could get it maybe a felony for like fraud or for some sort of scheme to defraud, or sometimes they tack on some other charge. But even that, to me, that's just not enough.
Yeah. No, it's not, because again, the damage and the cost of resources and everything else is just outrageous. I mean, let's be honest, Hollywood has at least a history of this sort of behavior. So
Yes.
when you look at it, you're not shocked by it. I mean, it dates back to Judy Garland and even before that.
Yeah.
Judy very famously was molested by the Munchkins.
Right.
I mean, it's been going on for 100 years. But
the casting couch thing has been a thing that people have known about for decades.
Yep. So I think when you see this stuff come up, you just immediately jump to, yeah, that doesn't surprise me, because honestly, that's where I went. When I saw it, I was like, yeah, okay, that tracks. But these are some really good points brought up by the defense. You've got a convicted felon, a history of fraud.
Yes.
There might be
it doesn't mean that he's lying, but it definitely puts it's very suspicious. It's like all those people that went after Michael Jackson. Was Michael Jackson a weirdo? Was he a kid toucher? Who knows? We'll probably never.
Something.
There was something very, very odd about him, and some people would say where there's smoke, there's fire. But he was never found guilty. In fact, he was never charged criminally. He settled with people, and you can say, well, why settle? But and I would never settle. But I'm also not sitting on hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And sometimes, just paying someone $10 million or $20 million and they're out of your hair forever. It's a cost benefit analysis that has to be done, I guess. So
that's true. Very good point.
But I don't know. It's one of those things where, in this case, I really hope that if it comes out that these people have a history of fraud, lock them back up. Put them back up for fraud.
I think you should. There has to be a consequence if there's something here. And it feels like there's something here because, again, he went from being held without bond to ROR. That's a big swing. Right.
This wasn't even a reduction of bond kind of thing. This is like, we're still going to go through with this because of the seriousness of the allegation. But we're not taking it all that seriously if we're going to hit you with an ROR. Yeah. So that's, well,
it says something, doesn't it?
I let's follow up on this, Dan. I hope, I want to see more updates on this because I want to see how it plays out for sure.
Hey, thanks for watching this clip from TCF Overtime, the fourth hour of our daily live show where we discuss the happenings of the court that we saw during the day and other law news. If you like this video, please do leave it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Leave us a comment, let us know what you thought. You can join us live every weekday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific, right here on this channel.